will also learn a little more about the blind guy. We learn he is a piano tuner in this episode. He has already been to the Ormond Hotel that day to tune the piano, which is great for the men because they have a perfectly in tune piano. But he left his tuning pitchfork thing, so throughout this episode, the blind guy is going to be making his way back. We don't really see him too much, but we're going to hear this tap every now and then in the text that refers to the blind guy tapping his way back. With this piano tuner, we get that exquisite contrast in perception that I was talking about, the way that we are seen differently by different people. I can't remember if it's Miss Deuce or Kennedy, but one of the two barmaids refers to the blind stripling as having this sweet, sad face. And, that's an interesting image, but contrast it with the way that he responded when he bumped into that guy with the really long name. Like, when he bumps into him, he said, God's curse on you, you're blinder nor I am, you bitch's bastard. Joyce reminds us of this right away. Similarly, please note the contrast between Simon Daedalus last episode when he encountered Dilly Daedalus and was so mean and vicious. None of that is here. Now we just have Simon at his most heartwarming with all his friends, singing, thinking about his dead wife, and so on. It's just a very different image of Simon Daedalus. As Bloom eats and has cider with Richie Golding, he's going to hear the men singing. I do not think, my way that I understand this text is that he cannot hear the conversations, but he can hear the singing, which is at a louder tone of voice. Like Odysseus, he will allow himself to hear the music and feel the emotions within the songs, but he will not allow himself to take action. Bloom is not the only one longing in this episode. All the men, the barmaids, everybody seems to be longing for something. The barmaids are attracted to Boylan. The men are thinking about long lost pasts or sadness from their youth. Everybody, even Boylan, is eager to get to Molly, and the men are eager to make money on the bets that they placed on the horses that day. A slightly confusing part, at 4 o'clock, the men are imploring Miss Deuce to snap the garter on her leg. So that is what is going on there. Sonner la cloche is the French referring to the time at 4 o'clock when, I guess, some bell or clock rings, and that's when Miss Deuce is going to snap her garter at 4 on the dot. At one point when Simon Daedalus is going to be singing this song about this woman Martha, Joyce refers to him as Siopold, or all three of these characters, because the characters are Simon Daedalus, of course, but also Lionel, the character in the opera who he is, the role that he is singing. And then also, of course, Leopold Bloom. They've all been merged into one character because they are sustained by the same feeling of that lost love. This idea, though, of merging identities into one kind of higher form, I think is something so Joycean, and it's something we'll see more later in the book in Circe. And I think, from my understanding, it's also very apparent in Finnegan's Wake. A few other characters at the bar. Tom Kernan will show up. He's just made it around for another drink. And then this new character, George Lidwell, minor character. He seems to be attracted to the barmaids, but they do not seem to be reciprocating. Simon's singing is praised, but there's a little asterisk. Ben Dollard says, 7 days in jail on bread and water. Then you'd sing, Simon, like a garden thrush. Thus implying that alcohol has had a negative effect on Simon's singing. One part of Bloom's thoughts that I find very interesting is here. Gone, they sing, forgotten. I too, and one day she with. Leave her, get tired, suffer then. Snivel, big Spanishy eyes goggling at nothing. Her wavy, heavy hair, uncombed. Yet too much happy bores. He stretched more. Are you not happy in your twang? It snapped. What is going to happen with Bloom and Molly? It's something we don't totally know the answer to. These are the hints that we get throughout the book. There are arguments to be made for that they will stay together. There are arguments to be made that they will one of them will leave the other. Here it seems to be suggesting that Bloom will leave Molly, which seems unexpected, but we don't know. Things are always up in the air. Everything is fluid in Joyce. Also recall the thing that Stephen said about a reconciliation. Where there is a reconciliation, Stephen said, there must have been first a sundering. There has definitely been a sundering between Bloom and Molly, but will there be a reconciliation? I find the part when Bloom is writing his letter to Martha Clifford, Bloom just does not seem very into it at all. He seems like it doesn't bring him the joy or excitement that I think he envisioned it would. We're starting to see also with Bloom's thoughts that the events of the day, the events of his life, the things that are happening at that moment, they're all starting to swirl more and more and become like his thoughts, his memories. They'll keep cropping up and they'll mix in very haphazard ways. And sometimes it's humorous, sometimes it's just kind of confusing or incomplete, but that's, I think, how thoughts work. In a manner similar to Wandering Rocks, we're going to see Blazes Boylan from time to time will cut over, and I think one of the sound effects that we get for the carriage that he's taking to Molly's is jingle or jaunted. Anytime those sound effects come up, we're talking about Blazes Boylan and him as he travels to Molly. Joyce is very good at having really long sentences. He's up there with Faulkner and his ability to just rattle on and on for pages. It seems like these sentences just wind in all different directions. But at the same time, he's also very good at brevity, at very imparting vast amounts of experience into very few words. Great example, I too, last of my race. Millie, young student. Well, my fault perhaps. No son, Rudy. Too late now. Or if not? If not? If still? He bore no hate. Hate? Love. Those are names. Rudy. Soon I am old. After Bloom leaves the Ormond Hotel and walks along the street, we're going to get something that we've kind of seen elsewhere in Hades and Wandering Rocks, where we have two scenes that are kind of spreading apart, but they're still right next to each other on the page. So they're going to be moving further and further. Obviously, at this point, Bloom is out of eyeshot and earshot of the hotel and what's happening within, but it's happening the conversations are right next to each other. So that may be a little confusing. As Bloom walks along the street, he sees this woman he refers to as the whore of the lane. And I'm unclear if he's actually slept with her or if he just made an appointment with her. Here's what he says. That appointment we made, knowing we'd never, well, hardly ever. Too dear, too near to home, sweet home. Sees me, does she? Looks a fright in the day. Face like dip. Damn her. Oh well, she has to live like the rest. Look in here. This damn her is probably the most vicious that we've seen Bloom at this point. And I feel like there's more about this prostitute somewhere else in the book. If anyone can remember, please let me know. Let me help you with a few other somewhat confusing parts in this episode. There's this recurring part about the horn, or the ha horn. This, at one point, Lenehan asks Boylan, he says, like, got the horn or what? He's asking him, is he sexually aroused? Because I think Lenehan knows he's going to see Molly. I'm less clear about the ha part, the ha horn. It could just be Joyce being musical. There's references to Hawthorne. Richie Golding is going to order something called a power. I did not know what that is. It is apparently a kind of whiskey. Another confusing sound effect is the part that says like cock cara or with a cock and a cara. Apparently this is the sound effect of Boylan tapping on the Bloom residence on their door at 7 Eccles Street. The episode is going to conclude in a very musical manner with Bloom farting, but he will be interrupting this quotation that he's reading on this picture as he tries to avoid the prostitute. He's looking at these antiques. He sees this framed picture, and written is the final words of Robert Emmet. So this is the quote. When my country takes her place among the nations of the earth, then and not till then, let my epitaph be written. I have done. This noble sentiment will be interrupted, though, with the typically Joycean sound effect of oh, Joyce, you and your sound effects. After this episode, we have another bar episode, Cyclops. I'll see you there.